One and live.
Wonderful. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome, everyone. It's so nice to see you all. Welcome to our friends who are joining us here in person at St. Jerome Elementary, and to our friends joining us live on YouTube, and to our friends that are popping into the Zoom meeting. It's so nice to see you all. If you have a moment before we get started, it would be great if you could update your Zoom name to let us know what country you are joining from. Or if you're in Canada, you can also let us know what province or city you're in. It would be great to see that before we get started. We have an amazing array of critters to share with you guys all today, but just to give everyone a chance to join, I do have a couple of trivia questions just to give us a couple of minutes. So my first trivia question. And for those of us that are on YouTube or on Zoom, we want you guys to answer in the chat. But to my friends in the room here, you could raise your hand and I can get a couple answers for this question. So my first question is, which of these is your favorite Canadian critter? Okay. And to our friends in the chat, you can answer A, B, C, D. But we'll do a couple here as well to see. We have a swallowtail butterfly, a ladybug, a painted turtle, and a wolf spider. So maybe we'll start over here on this side. Which one's your favorite? The wolf spider. Ooh, that's an interesting choice. I don't know if we'd all agree with that. Maybe we'll do one more right here with the mask on. 2 wolf spiders? Okay, we got to do one more. I got to do one more. I don't know. Do we all love wolf spiders? How about right here? He says wolf spider. Okay.
On YouTube who says turtle.
A friend from India says that they like the turtle. Yeah, painted turtles you can find in southern Alberta. They're very adorable. I'm also a turtle lover. Okay, we've got 2 more. These ones get a little bit harder. The first one was for fun. My next question is, which of the following can affect the life stages of insects? Very cold winters. In Canada, we can get very cold winters. Things like wildfires. Could wildfires maybe affect some of their life stages? Droughts, which means really long periods with no rain. Or is it all of the above? So you can answer in the chat. You can answer as a class. What do you guys think are some different things that could maybe affect those different life stages? We'll get one answer for this one. How about right here?
I think wildfire.
Okay, he thinks wildfires. That's definitely a right answer. Do you think if we have some animals here in a chrysalis or a cocoon and a fire comes through, that would probably have a bad effect on it? For sure, okay. Does anybody else have any other? What do you think? A drought would as well, right? Lots of these life stages need water. Lots of them need to have water in order to complete their life cycles. And one more, what do you think? Great answer. He says all of the above. Lots of different things that are happening in our environment can affect those life cycles. Okay, and we're going to do one more quick trivia question because we do want to get to our live creatures. So what is the name of the structure that a butterfly uses to complete metamorphosis? So I have a picture of it here on the slide. Does anybody know what this structure is called? I'm going to warn you right now. It's a bit of a tricky question. What do you think? A cocoon. Raise your hand if you agree that you think this is called a cocoon. Oh, I gotcha. I'm just going to ask our bug expert, what is the correct name for this?
It is a chrysalis. So the correct answer is B, chrysalis. There is no butterfly species in the world that makes a cocoon. Did you guys know that? No, but
We're
there is a
already
very
learning.
similar animal that does. And that animal is called a moth. Do you want me to begin?
In 1 second. I just want to do one more quick introduction because there is something important I want to talk about before we get to the bugs. And that is my land acknowledgement, because we're joining here on Treaty 6 territory. So I acknowledge that I'm joining from a place called Amiskwaciwa-Skaykan. And some of us actually live here. You probably know it as Edmonton, Alberta. And this is the traditional lands of lots of diverse groups. They include the Cree, the Saulteaux, the Blackfoot, the Métis, Dene, and the Nakota Sioux. And since we're also joining some of our friends on a virtual platform, I think it's also important to acknowledge all of those lands that you're joining on, not only across Turtle Island, but around the world. Because having respect for the land that we live on is a really important first step for us to actually give back to that land and to share that land with painted turtles and butterflies and ladybugs. So I want us to think about that in our minds as we go through our event today and really think about that land that we're sharing as we go through all of these different insects that share it with us. Okay, that is all that I have. I would like to introduce our speaker before I pass it over to her. So Corianne is the director, the outreach coordinator, and the animal care manager at Butterfly Wings and Wishes Limited. She has had the role for 8 years. She also volunteers her time as the education coordinator at the Alberta Amphibian and Reptile Conservancy. Both these organizations are dedicated to hands-on experience-based education and conservation of invertebrates, reptiles, and amphibians, all subjects which drive passions in Corianne's life. Though you're most likely to see her in a classroom with a bug in her hand, ready to introduce to new friends, she loves doing field work, especially if it involves chasing cool bugs around in deserts, swamps, woods, or the jungle. She documents her adventures on the lab at butterflyab.ca, and she's never met a bug she doesn't like. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Corianne.
All right, I'm so excited to be here with you all, everybody. Super excited to talk about cocoons and chrysalis and bug metamorphosis. In fact, we're going to be talking a lot about butterflies and moths today, but we also have some other animals that go through some cool transitions. I have some frogs here, I have a salamander here, and I have a very special guest who is a giant toad. So we're going to go through them one by one. We're going to start with butterflies and moths. Now, this is just a small little glimpse of some of the butterflies that live here in Alberta. We actually have about 170 to 200 species in our province. So this is just a few. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass these around. Some of them you may recognize and some of them you won't. But I also have some living ones. So you guys can take this. You can pass this around. So you guys can take a close look at it with your eyes. That way you have something to do with your hands as well while I look at some other animals. But we're going to dive right into some butterflies. Now, I breed butterflies at my lab, so I have them all year long. These are painted lady butterflies. And at the beginning of the class, a couple of our friends here today said they looked like moths. Well, butterflies and moths are really closely related. Some scientists can even say that butterflies are just a special type of moth, but they do some things a little bit differently. And one of the things that they do differently is how they metamorphose, because many moths make this, a cocoon, but no butterflies do. Now I'm going to pass these around in just a minute. I have a few different types of cocoons in here. This is actually a silk moth cocoon. You guys ever felt the fabric silk or worn a silk shirt or felt silk pillows or anything like that? Well, we get that material from bugs. We get it from moths. They use it to make this, a cocoon. Some moths use leaves, some moths use sticks, but cocoons are very different from a chrysalis. So we're going to go through the life stages of a butterfly one by one to show you what that looks like and how a cocoon comes in differently. Now this you guys are going to recognize. What's a baby butterfly called? Caterpillar. Very, very good. Now we have some caterpillars in here. I did bring some eggs as well, but they're so small. They're in here eating baby food. This is a special diet that we have in our lab, which is a great way to raise caterpillars if you don't want to go through an entire greenhouse worth of plants. So there are some caterpillars in here. These guys are about 10 days old. So they're already much bigger than they were as an egg. I don't know if you can see the very small blue dots on this leaf. They're about the size of a pinhead, but those are the eggs that these guys hatched out of only 10 days ago. So you can already see the huge size difference between egg and caterpillar. I'm going to bring these around. You guys ready? Who here has raised caterpillars? Hands up if you have.
We did it in kinder.
You did it in kinder. Nice. Do you see the blue dots? So we don't send out the eggs. So you guys are going to see the blue dots on the leaf. So those are the caterpillars. Those are the eggs. And each butterfly can lay 500. Now, not all of those survive. In the wild, maybe 5 would survive to becoming an adult. So not very many. That's why they lay so many eggs, is because we don't take care of them. Because that'd be way too expensive. Yeah. Not that insects do that kind of thing. But you can see the tiny little eggs on there. Do you see them? They're blue. And these are just eggs that were laid this morning in the container over there with the butterflies since I packed it. Do you see how small they are? Isn't that amazing?
Wow, they are small.
And it took them only 10 days to get this big. So they are very hungry caterpillars. Now you can imagine if there was something like a drought and there wasn't enough plants, do you think a lot of these caterpillars would have enough food? No, they wouldn't. It's true, or even none, yeah. Well, some might survive in other places. Do you guys remember last year when there was a lot of wildfires in Alberta? And how some parts of Alberta even had to evacuate because it was so dangerous? Now, the animals didn't get evacuations like that, but for sure wildfires that happen in places like Drayton Valley, for instance, all those animals would have been in a lot of trouble because caterpillars don't have the chance to get into a car and drive away. So droughts and fires can be very, very hard. But another hidden danger of fires is the smoke. You guys remember how much smoke was in the air, even here in our town? Lots of us remember. So butterflies, moths, all kinds of bugs, they don't breathe through a nose. They breathe through holes in the sides of their bodies called spiracles. Can you guys repeat that word?
Spiracle.
Very, very, very good. And those spiracles, they're very sensitive to things like smoke in the air. So for sure, did any of you guys get like a sore throat or anything during those fires? So imagine what it was doing if you're breathing right with your whole body. Probably your whole body would get a sore throat, wouldn't it? It would probably, there were lots of sick animals. Now, after the caterpillar, do you guys remember what the word is for butterfly? It's not cocoon, it's a chrysalis. Very good. Now, I actually have two types here. One is unhatched, so these are live chrysalis, and one are hatched chrysalis. Do you guys see what looks like blood?
Yeah.
Okay, so bugs like this don't have any blood at all. They actually have something else entirely. This red stuff is what we call meconium. And for anybody who might be a mother in the room, butterflies, what they're kind of doing, when they hatch from this chrysalis, it's almost like they give birth to themselves. So their first poop is really weird. And so when the butterflies hatch out, their first poop is red. It's not blood, it's called meconium. You guys say meconium?
Meconium.
Now, if I were to touch these with my fingers, these ones here, they would feel actually like human skin. I don't think we can all touch them, but I'm gonna brush one lightly and see if it wiggles. Sometimes they wiggle a bit when we touch them. Oh, there we go. Do you see that? Now that was just because I touched it very, very lightly. This is a living animal. This is its body. It's its skin. So there's no creature curled up inside. This is the animal. Do you guys see that?
Yeah.
And it's awake. It doesn't have eyes right now, but it does have a brain and it has muscles and it has all kinds of little body parts. And when it hatches, you can see how it just looks like an empty shell, like an egg case almost. Do you see that? Looks a little creepy, but I promise you, it's just beautiful, not creepy. I think it's beautiful. Hands up if you think it's beautiful. It's pretty amazing that these animals can go into this kind of stage and then kind of be born all over again, looking completely different. You guys think that's pretty amazing?
Yeah.
Humans definitely don't do something like that, and very few animals do. Now, this is the chrysalis, but if you're a moth, well, some moths, if you're a moth, before you make this, you make a cocoon. And can anyone guess what this might be for?
Protection.
Protection. Who said that? Smart, smart. Good answer. That is the right answer. So this is for protection. You would make it out of leaves. This one's a great example. So you can see this one is made of leaves, and this is the hole where it eventually emerged once it became a moth. So I'm going to pass these around so you guys can touch them with your fingers. They're all empty. There's no more moths in here. They've all hatched and flown away. But you can touch them. You can smell them.
Oh.
I think they smell kind of like nature, just kind of like pattern. So pass it this way this time. So feel free to investigate with your fingers and your nose, and if you want to touch them. There's no bugs left in there, so they're totally safe to work with, which is pretty cool. So I think we learned a little bit. Now, who wants to touch a butterfly?
Me.
Yeah, who here has heard that touching butterflies is really, really dangerous for them? They might never fly again. A couple of us have heard this. This is a really, really, really common thing to believe. It's actually not really true. Now, it is true that butterflies are very, very fragile. So we have to be very careful when we touch them, don't we? Because just like any bug, are they easy to squish?
Yeah.
Yes, they are. Now, I'm going to show you guys how I'm going to pick this butterfly up. I'm going to use these two fingers. Woo. Better make sure they don't get out. I'm going to use these two fingers because if we try to pinch really hard, try and pinch with these two fingers. Everybody hold up your fingers like this. Pinch as hard as you can. Can you pinch very hard?
Yes.
Can you? Okay, try pinching with these two fingers. These two here. Can you pinch way harder? Yes, like you could hurt somebody with your fingers like that. So we use these two fingers because they're our gentle fingers, because we can't pinch very hard. Now I'm going to pick the butterfly up on its wings, with my two fingers like this, with the head of the butterfly facing forward. And I'll show you guys on the screen. This is really hard to do with wild butterflies because you know what they do not do? Stay still. So trying to catch a wild butterfly like this is pretty difficult. It's much easier to put it in a net first, a nice soft net made of a nice light fabric. Now I'm going to bring this butterfly around. She looks like she only has 4 legs, but she does actually have 6, like all insects. It's just 2 of her legs are really small, like little furry T-Rex arms under there. She's in a family of butterflies called brushfoot, and those little feet there are what give her that name. So I'm going to bring her around. If you guys hold out your finger, you're going to feel her do this little tap dance on you. This one is a female, and she has 2 little toes on each feet, just like this. And they're so small, they can go inside of the ridges on your fingerprint. Can you feel that? It tickles, doesn't it? Are you guys ticklish? It is weird, isn't it? Now, in the wild, we may not be able to feel this very easy because it's pretty hard to catch a butterfly and do this. Is it exciting? No, thank you. Good communication. I really like that you use both your words and your hands. That was very good. Do you feel that? Do you guys see your fingerprint on your finger? If you all look really closely at your fingerprint, can you see all the lines and the wiggles on the top of it? So all those little lines and wiggles, they look small, but this butterfly's feet are smaller. They can fit between all the lines on your finger. Isn't that amazing? Most insects have 2 feet. We're going to see that in some of the bigger insects we look at in a few minutes.
Most it feels kind of like blood.
So it feels like a liquid because it's so light. Interesting. But does it hurt?
No.
No.
This is like scratching. Oh my god.
It's pretty interesting, isn't it?
Sticking on food.
No, thank you. Good communication. No, thank you as well. Do you want to see up close though? We can watch our friend do it. See the little toes? See her eyes? She has some big, beautiful brown eyes with compound eyes. So they kind of look like a kaleidoscope. And her antenna, do you see those?
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Butterflies usually have clubbed antenna, by the way. That's one of the ways we can tell them apart from moths, is that butterflies have these antennae that are long and skinny, but with a ball on the end. That's one of the ways we can tell them apart from moths, because it's not true that butterflies are pretty and moths are ugly. All of them can be different. There are beautiful moths, and there are very brown and plain butterflies. Her colors are not too exciting. In fact, on the outside of her wings, they're just kind of a plain grayish brownish, but on the inside, they're bright orange. Why do you think an animal would want to be brown like this? Yes, what do we call that?
Camouflage.
Camouflage. Very, very good. So she has good camouflage on the outside, and then she's a brighter orange on the inside. Now it's a little early in the morning and it's very dim, and it's also winter here in Canada. So nobody really has their wings open today, although we might see a couple showing off. There we go. Now, one of my teacher friends here wanted to bring the flight cage around and show the butterflies living inside of it. That would be great. If you don't mind, maybe being in the background. Just so the kids can see how they're all living together. There's a little vial in there with some nectar, which is made of a sugary sweet syrup so that they can drink. They have a thing called a proboscis. Yes, very, very good. All right, so I don't know if we wanted to get any questions about butterflies before we moved on, or if we want to move directly onto beetles and other bigger bugs.
Yeah, and we have a few friends on YouTube as well. So if they have questions about butterflies, they are welcome to pop them in the chat and we'll hear them. I'll let you know if any come up.
Cool. We'll take one question for now.
Can butterflies, if they go on you, can they give like
That's a good question. The answer really is no. There's not a lot of diseases that insects carry that humans can catch just by being around them. Now, some insects can transmit diseases other ways. For instance, if they bite you, you guys have heard about how mosquitoes can transmit diseases?
Yeah.
But that's because they're doing something else. They're not just touching you. There isn't really much dangerous about many insects if you're just holding them or working with the dead ones. However, I will mention that some people are allergic to insects. Do you guys have allergies?
Yeah.
Usually the people who are allergic to insects are the same people who are allergic to crustaceans. So if you're allergic to crustaceans, don't eat bugs. Got it? Okay, let's look at some beetles.
Beetles.
I have two types of beetles here. I have a very cool display of darkling beetles. And then I also have a little investigation we're gonna do with the secrets inside of this container that just looks like a container of dirt. We're gonna show this one off afterwards. It's gonna be kind of like a Jack in the Box. In the meantime, I'm gonna show you this. This is probably the coolest insect that I brought today, if you ask me. These are darkling beetles, and you're gonna notice right away that they are on styrofoam. And that is because the larva, the caterpillars, so to speak, the larva of the darkling beetle can eat styrofoam and degrade it. So this is a very amazing thing. They can eat other types of plastic too, but polystyrene is their favorite. And they can do this in place of eating anything else at all. So you don't need to feed them anything else. Can you guys think of a lot of other animals that eat plastic? No, because it's very, very rare. But eat plastic and can survive and can stay healthy. So usually what happens when an animal eats plastic? Can anyone tell me? They die. That's right. We've probably heard of birds eating plastic and turtles eating plastic and it being very bad for them. So this species of beetle, the larva can eat plastic and they can do it without dying. In fact, they can turn it into organic waste, and they also break down the polystyrene into single molecule styrene, which can then be used either for like biofuel plastics or for turning into other things like recycled. But you may have seen like corn plastic, things like that. So it's a much more simple single molecule material that can be used for other things and actually recycled, which an expanded foam polystyrene cannot. So that was very technical, not very much for the kids, but I'm sure a lot of the adults really enjoyed that. In the meantime, do you guys want to look at some cool beetles? We have a little colony going on in here. There's the grown-ups, there's the pupa, which is what in beetles what you call a chrysalis, and then there's the babies. And the babies are going to surprise you because they look bigger than the adults. I'm going to take this piece right out. Do you see them all?
While you're showing off the bugs, we have a question on YouTube from
Yes.
Zenon. And Zenon, it's going back a few seconds, but Zenon's wondering what color mosses can be.
Oh, moss can be almost any color. Something really, really cool to Google for everybody there at home with a computer is a moth called the Madagascar sunset moth, which is one of my favorite moths. It's the color of a rainbow. But most moths, when we think of moths, we think of small brown animals or gray animals or white animals. It is true that most moths are generally colored like that, brown or gray or white. And that's because they are camouflaging. Isn't it cool? Now, these are friendly beetles. They can't bite, they can't sting. Their only defense is being a little stinky, kind of like a skunk, but not nearly so bad. So these are not ones we have to worry about. So if anybody wants to pet the beetle, you can reach out and you can touch it on its back. And try. I'm gonna hold it still. You can hold it if you want to, yeah.
I want to own it.
Yeah, you want to hold it? Okay, they kind of march around like they have very important business. Nope. Yeah, you ready? Here, I'll help you. But remember, you can't drop it. We're trying to be very careful with our animal friends. Oh, there he goes. See how she investigates, just like you might investigate with your eyes or your hands. She investigates with her antenna and her legs. No, thank you. Very good. You want to try? Beetles are really cool. Beetles are also something called diverse. Can you guys say that word? Diverse. There's a lot of diversity in beetles. In fact, there's more diversity in beetles than there is of any other animal. There's more beetle types on our planet than pretty much all the other animals combined. So for instance, if you took all the numbers of fish and all the numbers of amphibians and all of the mammals and all of the reptiles and all of the birds, and you piled them all up and you counted how many types there were, there's more of just beetles. There is a lot of types of beetles, probably somewhere between like 400,000 and 500,000 types of beetles. Be cool, right? We haven't discovered all of them though. Did you guys know that there's lots of animals still undiscovered on our planet?
Yes.
Yes, there are a lot, or at least not named. It could be that the indigenous people in that area know about the animals, but that we haven't named them yet. So we might not know, for instance, much about them in a remote part of the rainforest, or maybe on an island very far away in the Pacific. There might be a lot of animals that we don't know yet. You can see the waste that they're building. You can see now that I've moved some of this, you can see some of the powdery waste that they're producing. Which is pretty interesting down there. Now, for anybody listening online, why are we using these beetles to eat plastic in landfills? Because they're very slow. They don't eat fast. They're not very greedy. They're not even like a caterpillar. Caterpillars eat hundreds of times their own body weight in their lives. Beetles are very, very, very slow as larvae, so it's not very efficient. But, no, thank you, very good. What breaks down the waste is something called enzymes inside of their bodies. And those enzymes are what's being studied, because maybe we can isolate those enzymes and use them to treat plastics. Pretty cool.
Why is it so hard?
Oh, great question. So this is an exoskeleton, right? Can you guys all say that word? Which means skeleton on the outside. And beetles usually have a really hard one. They usually have a very hard exoskeleton. That's one of their ways of protecting themselves. Not all insects have a hard exoskeleton. Butterflies are very soft, but beetles have a hard one. It's one of their ways of protecting themselves. It's gonna walk on you. Are you ready? I like how the antenna go like this, like it's waving. Pretty cool, right? If any of you guys have a pet lizard, you may have also seen some of these. Pet lizards love to eat beetles like this, especially their babies. Now, I'm going to show you one more beetle really, really quickly. I'm going to put this container back together there. And then we're going to move on to some frogs. Are you guys ready for that? Okay. We want to talk about animals with all types of life cycles, but I'm going to show you this cool Jack-in-the-Box project that I brought. It's probably too long ago for you guys to know what that is. You know what a Jack-in-the-Box is? Okay, so there are two animals. Well, there's one species of animal hiding inside this container full of dirt. And I'm going to dump it out slowly onto this container and we're going to find them. What's in here is some beetles. So there's an adult beetle and there's a larva in here, but they're spectacular. They're one of Canada's largest species of beetles, and they're called stag beetles. Now, all I have is a female today, so she doesn't have great big antlers like many of the males do, but they're amazing. Oh, do we see it? She landed on her back.
Yeah, I see her.
She's gonna cling to my finger immediately. They're like the clingiest beetles ever. Oh, and then I can see the larva. It's the larvae that are really amazing to look at. Now, these larvae would spend all of their time inside of rotting wood or perhaps in a log on the ground, and they would be eating the wood in here. Now, a lot of Canadians are familiar with wood-boring beetles because they might know about the mountain pine beetle, which is an animal that's actually becoming more common due to climate change because it's more able to survive our winters. And that beetle type is actually fairly damaging to our industries because they wreck a lot of trees. They eat living trees, unlike this type of beetle, which eats only dead ones. But mountain pine beetles eat living ones, and it can be tough on our industries and logging, and even on our forests. If you drive through the mountains, you can see a lot of dead trees and things like that from the mountain pine beetle destruction. And normally they wouldn't be able to survive very long and cold winters. But these days, so many of our winters are so mild, and there's different types of snow and different types of climate over the winter, so we get more of those beetles surviving. And we've also kind of engineered our forests to only have one tree, so they can spread easier. So this is the baby, and this is the adult. Doesn't that look crazy? Do you see the little pincher jaws? This is why we're not going to hold this one. I don't know if she'll actually pinch me, but they can pinch pretty good. Do you see those on there? Yeah, some beetles can pinch. I'm not afraid of her because I still love animals, even if they can pinch me. Kind of like, I mean, like, I know that a tiger could hurt me, but I still think they're really, really cool. What do you guys think?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm not really afraid of it. And I know that it wouldn't actually hurt. She's not venomous. She's not dangerous. She just give me a little pinch, which I already told you how my cousin bit me on the arm when I was a kid. That hurt way more than this pinch would. So I wouldn't even need a Band-Aid. See the baby? We don't see these a lot in nature because they're always hiding, but they are out there. When you guys walk through the forest and you see dead logs on the ground or even leaves on the ground and piles of garbage from nature, this is one of the animals who helps clean all that stuff up. So this is what's in there. That's what's hiding. Maybe not right here in Edmonton, but in places around Canada and especially around the world in Indonesia. I'm sure you guys have lots of bigger creatures like this hiding in the wood. Oh, she's saying hello. She's going to clean her body. Look at that. I think she's adorable. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
What a cool beetle.
Looks like freaky.
She does look a little bit freaky. Yeah, I think so too. But I still think she's cool. Kind of like a goblin shark or something strange like that. I'll see. She's cleaning her antenna is what she's doing. She is a little bit reddish brownish, isn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah, that actually gave her a name. She's a reddish brown stag beetle. Ooh, Ooh, pretty cool. And if you guys travel around the world, and especially you listeners that are from in other parts of the world, you probably are just like, oh, well, we have bigger beetles than that. And it's true. The biggest beetles in the world are probably more like the size of my hand. These are just the biggest beetles in Canada. And it's because it's so cold here. It's hard for animals like this to survive long winters. What's your question? There are rhinoceros beetles that are some of the biggest beetles in the world. Yes. Rhino beetles can be huge. And they have a great big horn right in the middle of their head like a rhinoceros, which is what gives them their name.
Just before you put it away, we have a question from our friend Abir on YouTube, and he's wondering what the white thing is. If you could explain it just a little more to them.
Sure, yeah. So this is the baby. You want to come back over here? Put her away. So this is the baby. This is a baby beetle. Now, beetles are just like butterflies. They have 4 parts to their life cycle. They have egg, they have a larva, and then this turns into something called a pupa, and finally it turns into an adult. So all the things that you see in a butterfly, you see in a beetle too. This is kind of like, well, if I could compare it, it's like a caterpillar, but this is the caterpillar of the beetle. I hope that makes sense. Oh, you see it's reaching. Oh, so cute. Now she doesn't take care of it, by the way. I just have them in the same container. She's much like a butterfly mom. She lays eggs and then she just leaves.
And then another friend on YouTube is wondering, what are the different colors that beetles can be?
Oh, great question. I've seen beetles that are green like apples. I've seen beetles that are yellow, but I would say that most beetles are black and brown. Now, would you guys agree with that? Most of the beetles that you've seen outside, would you say they're black and brown?
Yes.
Except maybe for one very special and one very famous beetle. Because have you guys seen ladybugs?
Yes.
And you guys know that those are beetles?
Oh,
Yes, they are. Now they're called ladybugs, but they are in fact a beetle. I'm gonna make a giant mess here right now. I'm sure it's really interesting to watch. Just yeah. Everybody should work with bugs. Then you get to make lots of messes all the time. This container, by the way, mimics the inside of a log. It's nice and tight and a little bit compressed, so it helps them feel safe. Are you guys ready to talk about frogs?
Yay!
All right, so we have a couple frogs we're just gonna show today. And we have a salamander and we have a toad that we can touch. Now, the first frog here today is a wood frog. This is an animal that's native to our area of Turtle Island here in Canada. And this animal, it's got amazing adaptations. This is one that was surrendered to our facility. It wasn't caught from the wild. It was one that was raised in a classroom, which is very difficult to do and also illegal in our region. So when it was caught, they brought it to a shelter facility because you can't raise frogs in classrooms here in Alberta. Now, this is a wood frog. It may look humble, but this animal has the ability to freeze solid into ice to survive the winter. Have you guys heard about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you guys are so smart. So this is one of the only frog species in the world that can do that. And when I say freeze solid into ice, I mean frozen. They don't have a heartbeat. Their blood doesn't pump. They don't move. They don't breathe. They look like a little frog popsicle. And it has to happen very slowly. I couldn't just go take her and put her in a freezer. It has to be cued by environmental changes over time. So it has to be triggered by autumn when we go back to school and the ground gets colder. We can't touch this one because it's still pretty wild. See her in there? We're gonna look quickly because then I'm gonna pull out a toad we can touch. She's kind of reddish. They come in lots of colors of frogs, by the way. Yeah, this one's cute. You can see the black mask over her eyes, kind of like a bank robber. Yeah, pretty cool. That's our distinctive characteristic, by the way. That's how we tell it's a wood frog, is this black mask. Lots of animals have black lines or stripes through their eyes to help camouflage the movement of their eye, because lots of predators watch for that. They look in the dark, they look to see an animal looking around, but if they can't see the eyes moving, then they don't see the animal. But yeah, she's an amazing creature. And this is an animal, frogs, by the way, one of the reasons I brought frogs, not only to talk about life cycles, but to talk about climate change, because these are some animals that are being affected by it more quickly and in bigger ways than a lot of other animals. So can we, yeah, there's a reason we're just that's okay though. Do you see? You can see her big back legs. This frog would live in wetlands in the wild. Now, wetlands are usually down by rivers or down in areas where there's lots and lots of water. And those are the exact same places that people like to live and where people like to build. So their habitat's in a lot of trouble. And also their hibernation is always in trouble.
So we have another 2 YouTube questions. One is about why is it illegal to have frogs in classrooms? And the other is from our friend in India who's wondering, is it poisonous? Because
Oh.
they're poisonous toads and frogs.
Yes, there is. Now, frogs and toads are really different because toads actually have a gland that makes poison, but some frogs, not this one, this one is not poisonous. Some frogs can produce poison from the foods that they eat. Have you guys heard about the old statement, we are what we eat? You are what you eat? Well, some frogs can eat ants, and ants actually are quite toxic. And they can turn those ants into a toxic poison in their skin. And those are called poison dart frogs. Have you guys heard of them? Now, poison dart frogs are very poisonous in the wild, but if you have them in captivity, and you guys might see as you grow older, you might see people have poison dart frogs in captivity, like in zoos or even as pets. If you don't feed them ants, they're not poisonous. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, amazing, because they make it out of their food. You are what you eat. But toads are different. I'm going to pull out a toad actually, while we talk about why it's illegal to have frogs in the classroom. And this is because of something called the Wildlife Act here in Alberta. Our Alberta Wildlife Act is actually not even the strongest in Canada, but one of the things that it disallows, so one of the things that's not allowed is releasing of wildlife. So if you release wildlife at all, if you catch a salamander, if you catch a frog, if it's a vertebrate wildlife such as one of those animals, and you release it, it is against the Wildlife Act. It's illegal. And those protections were put in place to protect our animals. So our frog diversity, our salamander diversity, our toad diversity, and our reptile diversity is plummeting. In the same way that pollinator diversity is, they are in big trouble. So in especially 2013, a lot of these laws changed to protect these animals. Humans carry two very serious diseases that are affecting frogs and toads. One is a fungus that gets under their skin and suffocates them. And the other is a virus that stops them from being able to metamorphose. And we are the vectors of those diseases. So you know how we asked if there are diseases that bugs can give us? Humans carry diseases that are affecting frogs and toads. And when you release frogs and toads into a watershed, you do kill about 40% of the other frogs and toads in that watershed. And the survival rate of the released ones is known to be 0. So none of the frogs and toads you've raised, categorically, according to our data, will survive, and they will also kill many of the wild ones. So we're trying to protect the animals by having laws like that in place. So let's look at a giant toad. That's very sad news, I know. It's very, very sad. So let's look at an animal that's a good example of things that we're doing to try and save these creatures. So this is Burp. I'm going to pull her out. Burp is amazing. Burp is a male smooth-sided toad from a country called Brazil. Have you guys heard of Brazil? I've lost my voice a little bit, so I can't really roll my R's, but you would say Brazil. And Brazil is got the Amazon rainforest, and that is where this big guy would live. This is one of the world's largest species of toads. I love his, I mean, it's not an expression. Animals like this don't really have expressions, but you would say this looks grumpy if it was a person. And I think that's, if this was a person, it would be true. And I just think that's so cute. So Burp is amazing. Burp feels like a big water balloon. He does have bumpy skin, and he doesn't secrete his poison. Now, lots of toads, they secrete poison out of their skin, and it makes them dangerous to work with, especially with kids or in a classroom. All toads, all true toads, have poison glands. One here, one here. So if you eat a toad whole, you'd get a tummy ache. Maybe you'd even puke. You wouldn't die with this toad, and you wouldn't die with any of our Canadian toads, but you get a tummy ache. So have you guys ever eaten toads? If you eat the toads, don't eat this part. It looks like a big, like, just like, it looks kind of like a big, you know, like that part on your, that's near your thumb right there that you'd press if you were Spider-Man. I think it looks like that, but it's just behind their eye. That's their toxin glands. That's where they make poison. So if I took a bite out of this toad, then I would get sick if I ate that part, but all the rest would be safe on this type of toad. Now, some types of toad are able to take that poison and secrete it through their skin. So if you touch them and then touch your mouth, or if you got it in a cut, it would make you sick. We can touch this toad. Can you touch it? It's like a water balloon. It's amazing. You can touch his toes too. And if you hold your hand flat, I'll let him rest his legs on you. Now, this is a social species of toad, which means that he needs to live in groups. So he's here alone today, but back at the laboratory where he lives, he does live with a group of toads just like him, and they sing to each other at night, and it's very, very cute. So I would say that this toad does not make a very good pet because you have to have so many of them and they're so big. His house where he lives is the size of at least 2 or 3 of these classroom tables in here. It's very, very big. So it'd be hard to keep that as a pet. Now, one of the reasons that these toads originally came to Canada is to see if they would breed in captivity. In the wild, their habitat's in a little bit of trouble. You guys have heard about how the Amazon rainforest is in trouble. So some animals are sometimes taken into captivity to do things to see if they will survive in captivity if the habitat is disappearing. This is called a reservoir population, and this means that the animal won't go extinct even if their habitat goes extinct. Another good example of this is the white rhino. There's white rhinos in captivity, but there's none left in the wild because their habitat is unsafe for them. So when these toads, this generation of smooth-sided toads came to Canada, that was the intention, was to see how they breed in captivity to make sure that they never go extinct if their habitat goes extinct. Now, it turns out that there's not much of a problem because every time these toads have babies, they have about 10,000 of them. So they're going to be okay in captivity. But the Amazon rainforest is definitely in trouble. So this is a great example of a species that acts as an ambassador to help us understand what we'd lose if we lost forests like that. These amazing toads that sing to each other. Another grade 3 class named Kim Burke, by the way. One of my favorite things to do is get name suggestions from kids like yourselves. And whenever we get a new animal or another animal surrendered to us, we love to have lists of names. So if anybody ever wants to make a big list and email it, we love taking name suggestions. They just have to be fun and funny. They can't be scary names. So no names like killer. Because although you guys are all really brave, sometimes these animals go and work with kindergarten kids or other people who might be more scared of animals, like who've never met an animal in their whole life.
Missy, as you're finishing bringing the toad around, just because
Gonna walk up your arms. Maybe she thinks your hair is the rainforest.
People that are joining us online that probably will have to leave in the next few minutes. Would it be
Sure.
okay if while you finish showing them off, I just give a couple reminders to our schools that are joining us online and then pass it back over to you? Okay, I'm just going to switch. If you wouldn't mind, I'll mute you and I'll switch over to my audio just so that we can. Okay, and schools that are joining us, you are welcome to stay. We're going to be about 15 more minutes of critters before we go, but I know some of us do have to leave a bit early. So I wanted to give you a couple reminders in case you're jumping out early. And reminder number 1, sorry, what? Oh, I don't know why it's like that. All right. Reminder number 1 is that we have World Water Day coming up. So if you enjoyed this, we have another event, similar age group, similar vibe, where we're going to be learning about clean water around the world and how it connects us. So you can register on our website. And the other reminder I have for you is that you should sign up for our newsletter if you haven't done so already. So the newsletter is a great way for you to be able to see what's coming up. If you want to be the school that has us come and meet you in person, like these lucky kids at St. Jerome, the way to do that is to sign up for our newsletter so that you get that information first and you can sign up first. So those were my couple little reminders. That's all that I had to share with you. If you are leaving now, I wanted to thank you for joining us. But if you're able to stay for 15 more minutes, we do have a few more critters that we'd like to share before we log off. So that's all. I'll switch it back over to you guys and you can keep going.
Cool. I hope you all enjoyed that. Here in Canada, we do have lots of toads. You could probably find them just even around Edmonton here, or just outside of Edmonton, more like, because we know that animals don't usually like to live in the cities with us, especially small, delicate animals like this. Water probably wouldn't be very good here in town, but none are as big as this. This is one of the world's biggest types of toad species, so they're not usually quite this dramatic. We've had a lot of questions about what colors animals can be. Toads can be a lot of colors. Now, normally if toads are, if animals are very poisonous, they're bright, bright, bright colors. So that's the warning. But with, oh, he doesn't want to come off. But with toads, we find that's not the case. It's probably because I'm nice and warm. Here you go. With toads, that's not the case. They're generally all kind of brown or multiple colors like that, gray, even black. There's some really cool toads that look like pebbles that are just black. But most of them are not like neon green like the poison dart frogs are. The poison dart frogs are really bright colors like electric yellow, or they look like a cool video game background. They're amazing. Now I'm going to show you guys a salamander. This is a Canadian animal. So this is actually one of the most widespread amphibians in North America. They live all the way down from Mexico right up here almost to the Arctic Circle. And they get big. Tiger salamanders get very, very, very big. Now, this is where all our very careful hand washing comes into play. Remember how we were careful to wash our hands before class? And that's to protect this animal. So I'm gonna get my hand wet with just plain spring water that's been dechlorinated. This will protect our salamander from me picking him up. We have to make sure that there's not a lot of stuff on our hands, like detergents or soaps or lotions or fragrances or anything. Even salts from our hands can hurt these guys. So we don't handle them very often in the wild. I never pick them up if they're a wild animal. Now, Pickle here, his name is Pickle. Pickle came again, actually from a preschool classroom. The preschool closed and he didn't have a home afterwards. This animal can never be released. Again, it's against the Wildlife Act to release this kind of wildlife. And it wouldn't be ethical. He's lived his whole life with people, so he doesn't know anything about living in the wild. He's about 15 to 20 years old, and they could live almost twice that, it's thought. So they're not very short-lived. And he looks like a big pickle, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Although I promise you, he probably doesn't taste like it. He's not been in brine, so I don't think he tastes like it. Now, some of the things we're gonna notice about him, he's got 4 toes on his front feet, 5 toes on his back feet. Now, do you remember how I got my hand wet? I'm gonna spray your hand. How about we move them away from your paper so your paper doesn't get wet? And we were all super careful to wash our hands, so this means this is gonna be okay. Just... Ooh, before I come, oh yeah, I love helpers. Do you want to hold him? He has no teeth. He's much like a frog. This looks like a lizard, doesn't it? But it is a salamander. Salamanders are amphibians, so they are more closely related to frogs and toads than they are to lizards, although their body definitely looks like a lizard body. Some things that are different from amphibians and lizards, so he has no fingernails and no toenails. Lizards do, and we usually call them claws. Now your hands have to be right over the table here because he would get very hurt if he fell. And we just stay super still, and when you're done, you can say, I'm done. Just walk up on you. He has no teeth. Most lizards have teeth. Most amphibians do not have teeth as adults, although there are some exceptions. He is heavy. Well, he's got bones in there. He's not a bug. He's not anything. He's got bones. He's got a little skeleton right inside his body. Frog skeletons are actually very cool to look up because they look a lot like a person's skeleton, but pancaked. They have a lot of the same body parts as us. They have elbows, they have finger bones, they have toe bones, they have a backbone. We don't have tails, but they do. Oh, look at all this. You didn't do a very good job washing your hand, did you? We're gonna use this hand. Yeah. That's okay. That's okay. We're still learning. We're still practicing. That's okay. We always give our animals nice long baths after they come to class as well, which would help rinse them off of anything that might have gotten onto them while we're doing this. Not in tap water, sorry. We always use dechlorinated water. Yeah. Now you can make water dechlorinated pretty easily by leaving it out in the sunlight for 24 hours. But you can also, you can buy spring water, or you can dechlorinate it with certain chemicals from the pet store, like we do for having fish tanks.
Mitzi, I have a question in the chat.
Sure.
Hopefully it reaches over there.
Yeah.
Is there a way to tell the difference between girl and boy salamander?
Oh, that's a really good question. It's quite difficult. So visually from the outside, they don't really look very different. Now, some of the ways that their body is built around their tail at the bottom, around their vent, which is where the eggs and where the poop comes out. The boys and the girls are a little bit slightly different, but it can be very hard to tell on the outside. So veterinarians usually have tools to help you do it. They have tools like otoscopes. They have other tools that can help them tell what is a boy and what is a girl when you take them to the vet. And that's generally what I would recommend if you want to be 100% sure, is ask an expert, because they'll be better at telling them. We might be just by looking. Now, salamanders, again, because they're an amphibian, this one's baby was a tadpole. Salamander tadpoles are a little bit different from frog and toad tadpoles. The tiger salamanders here in Alberta, they lay their eggs singly. So each salamander egg is attached to one plant, one by one. Frog and toad eggs are laid in these masses of thousands of eggs all together like jello, or in strings like jello with eggs all throughout it. The salamanders are usually, their eggs are individual, and they're a little bit harder to find. Their tadpoles are really cool. And in some places in the world, the tadpoles never change into an adult salamander and they come on land. is stay in the water. And they live their whole lives as basically what looks like a grown-up, slightly different tadpole. And if they do that long enough, they become their own species, and we call them oxalotls. But oxalotls are genetically pretty much identical to the tiger salamander. Now, oxalotls are extinct in the wild. Their native habitat is Mexico City, so there are not very many left in the wild, but they're very, very common in captivity. All right, now for those of us who are still waiting, do we have time for one more?
We have time for one more.
Friend? Cool, I brought a tortoise. No, not 40 pounds. Oh my goodness, would he fit in any of these? No. He's about 2 pounds. He's small. His name is Wally, which is short for walrus, not Walter. I didn't name him. He's in here. Now, he's not really much of a morning person, or a morning tortoise, I guess you should say. But he is awake. I did check on him a few minutes ago. So we're just gonna take a look. And yes, he is in here. Very, very good. Hi, Wally. Now, before I bring him out, I'm gonna grab Wally's flying carpet, which I didn't put over here. I put it over here, which is a foolish mistake of mine. Wally sort of needs something to stand on. Now, if we're all sitting on the floor and there's a carpet, it's really easy to let him walk around and meet everybody, and that is so fun. But because we're sitting at our desks, which I think is a great idea, we're gonna use a flying carpet to put him on. This will make sure that his feet are always touching something, which makes him feel safe. Because do you guys think that tortoises like to fly?
No.
No, they don't. They don't like to fly at all. So we're gonna pull him out and we're gonna put him on here, and then I'm gonna bring him around to meet you. Now, here at St. Jerome, we're very lucky because there are turtles in the school. So the school has some pet turtles that they take care of. Turtles and tortoises, in the English language, there are two different words for these animals. The word tortoise means land turtle, and all the tortoises in the world, they are mostly on land, and they are mostly herbivorous, so they mostly eat plants. Do your guys' water turtles only eat plants?
No.
No, does anyone know what they eat? Oh, bugs is one. What else might they eat? Plants. What is another animal that you think a turtle might eat? That would might be easy for a water turtle to eat. What do you think is something else they'd be a predator of? Yes. A larva, very good. What about something else that lives in the water? Yep. Fungi. Not quite. One more guess.
Fish.
Fish. Very, very good. Most turtles, most water turtles, are either omnivorous or fully carnivorous. So freshwater turtles eat a lot of fish, or maybe even frog, but they also eat a lot of bugs. But oceanic turtles, the saltwater turtles, the sea turtles, they eat jellyfish. Did you guys know that? Yeah, they do. And if you ever have a chance to look inside, maybe by looking it up on Google and looking at a sea turtle's throat, it looks like a whole bunch of spikes that point backwards. That makes it very, very easy for them to grab onto jellyfish. But that also means that they eat a lot of things that float in the ocean that look like jellyfish. And what might that be?
Garbage.
Turtles and tortoises are famous on the internet and famous worldwide for being big eaters of garbage. They're right up there with birds, which is one of their closest relatives. One of this guy's closest cousins is birds. And yeah, they get mixed up a lot. One time Wally was being babysat when me and the other director were gone, so we didn't have to care for him. So he was being babysat for a while. We were at a cool convention about bugs. And he ate a Nerf dart. Yeah, because he thought it looked like a delicious treat. Maybe it looked like a piece of fruit. And he likes to investigate things with his mouth, kind of like a baby does. You know, babies like to put things in their mouths because they don't really know for sure what it is. Animals are sometimes they are big investigators with their mouths. They're like, that smells right, or it looks right. I better eat it just to be sure. And he ate a Nerf dart. Now, I didn't find out until it came out the other end, which it did, and it was so yucky. Upon which I, of course, immediately took him to the vet. Now, it turns out that he was okay. Yet you can touch him on the shell. You can let him sniff your finger. He does not really like being petted on the head, though. So don't pet him on the head. It's better to pet him on his legs or feel his weird little toenails. He's a land tortoise, so he's not a swimmer. You can see these toenails are actually for digging.
I can feel him breathing.
Yeah, isn't it cool? Wally's about 15 or 20. We're not really sure. He came to us just before puberty. So he came to us when he was like a pretty, like an old kid.
Teenager.
And then he became a teenager with us. All this art is amazing. You guys are such good artists. Now tell me what his legs feel like. Let's use some describing words.
Yeah.
Scaly. Have you guys ever touched anything else that feels like this?
Snake scales,
Snake scales might feel like that. Anything else?
rocks,
Rocks. Very good. What do you think?
ticks.
Ticks. Oh my goodness. Now, that's a really, have you felt the tick? They're very hard, aren't they? Yeah. And if you smell too good, like let's say you smelled like fruit, he might even try and put you in his mouth.
Oh.
Now, don't worry. Yes, turtles and tortoises can bite. Almost anything with the mouth can bite. Wally here is very, very slow and not much of a threat. But I've seen the results of like sea turtle bites. And of course, we know about animals like snapping turtles. Isn't he special? Now, can someone tell me what about his body, besides his toes, makes him different from the water turtles that you guys have? Can you guys point out anything else that's obviously different? What's your guess?
That the shell is different.
It is. Now, would you say that it's taller,
Yeah.
less flat?
Yeah.
That's right. Do you think that having a flatter, more smooth shaped shell would be better for a swimming animal?
Yes.
Yeah, because it would make it more streamlined, wouldn't it? Whereas this animal here, he doesn't look like he would go through the water very fast, even if he did have flippers, does he?
We have a question on YouTube going back to the water turtle. Do
Sure.
the ones that eat jellyfish get stung by the jellyfish?
Great question. And as far as I know, no. Now, it might be good to check that out yourselves, to do a little bit of research, maybe as a class or with your teacher. But as far as I know, no, the jellyfish stings can't penetrate their scales. If you guys look at pictures of sea turtles, they're actually even more armored than these animals are. But I wonder if maybe they could sting around the eyes. Makes me wonder, you know. I haven't looked that up and I don't know it, so that was a really good question. I myself have never worked with sea turtles, so I'm definitely not a sea turtle expert. What's your question?
My question is, do you go back higher? You know, the back.
They do, yeah. They eat the whole thing, the whole jellyfish. Yeah, they grab it like you would grab like fabric in the water. Imagine if you had like a washcloth in the bath. They grab it with their mouths and they just bite it until it's all inside. Now those spikes that are on the insides of their mouths help make sure that the jellyfish doesn't slime its way back out. So it keeps them in there, but it's a very weird adaptation for sure. Is he pretty cool? His shell, by the way, wraps around him like a burrito. So his legs and his head stick out the front. His shell wraps around him like a burrito. And I know that St. Jerome's a really smart school, a smart school. So you guys might already know this, but a reminder that a tortoise's shell and a turtle's shell is attached to their skeleton. This is their backbone right there. Their hips and their shoulders are attached. And if you look up a tortoise or a turtle skeleton, you'll see that it is part of their body. In many, it's quite bony. And then there's a layer on the outside that's like a fingernail. Now, this layer on the outside, when you touch him on his shell, he can feel it. It's full of nerves and blood vessels, just like your fingernails. Has anyone here ever slammed their fingernail in a door?
Yes.
It hurts a bit, doesn't it? Just a little. So he can feel that on his shell. In fact, sometimes if I bring like a toothbrush around and I scratch him like that, he like lifts his butt up and like twerks around, and it's really cute and funny. I don't have a toothbrush here today though. So I know we have a couple more questions, then we'll bounce back to you because this is my last big animal.
Yeah, and actually, maybe while we're waiting to see what questions come up, I would love it if each of you could hold up the picture that you did, and maybe we could slowly go around and get a shot of every picture, because the students in the class here were drawing some of their favorite creatures that they saw today. So if we get close, we can get a little close up of everyone's pictures and kind of just go around. And our last chance on YouTube, if any of our friends on YouTube have any more questions, now's your last chance to get them in. Or any of our friends here in person, now's your last chance to get any last questions in while we still have some time together.
What's your question? Yeah, no, there's not a bandage, but his skin is really soft and loose there. And that helps him pull his head back inside of his shell. So I'm sure you guys have seen videos of or heard about how turtles can pull their heads inside of their shell. Now, he's not like a box turtle or something that can hide right inside, but he can tuck his head way, way, way inside to help protect it from maybe predators. We're gonna see if he wants a snack. We usually offer him a treat after doing a class just to positively reinforce that he did a really good job. But I think that he doesn't want anything today, or he's holding out for something sweeter, like a bit of apple, which is not good for him, but which he loves. What's your question? Tortoises, no. Some of them will occasionally, kind of like how horses or deer will occasionally eat meat, but their body isn't really made for it. Their body is herbivorous. They're a plant eater.
So one of our friends on YouTube from India wants to know if tortoises are ticklish.
Oh, yes, definitely. They have feelings just like any other animal. Now, will they tell us if it tickles or if it just bothers them? No, it's hard to read the body language of animals for sure. But all of those different sensations that you can feel on your skin, animals can feel too. They're just not as good at communicating it as we are because we don't speak their language. But yes, you can assume that he has all types of feelings in his little body, and ticklish is probably one of them. What's your question? They do. He has a stubby little tail that barely sticks out from underneath his shell in the back. His is very bent because he actually had an injury when he was younger before he came to us that hurt his tail quite a bit. So his is very crooked. But yeah, they do. And in some turtles, they have really long tails. Like there's turtles called long-tailed turtles. And if you ever get a chance to see a picture of a snapping turtle, their tails are like super long. It's really cool. So yeah, they do. They have little weird tails for sure. One final question.
Tortoises, like, I mean, what's the biggest animal that you have had in your society?
Oh, where I work, the biggest animal that we've had is a jungle carpet python, which is an animal from Australia. It's a large type of snake. And that jungle carpet python was about 9.5 feet long. So much longer than I am tall and about as thick around as my arm. So can you guys imagine a snake that big?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, she was really nice. She came to us kind of by an accident. She actually still lives there. She's really, really nice. Her name is Athena. She's quite a lovely snake.
Wonderful. Okay, so I am just going to say one last quick goodbye to all of our friends on YouTube. Thank you for all of your amazing questions. It was so nice to have our friends from Indonesia and India and Egypt here with us today. We look forward to seeing you again at our next event. And a huge thank you to Butterfly Wings and Wishes for taking the time to present. Always so much fun to have you. And thank you to St. Jerome for being such amazing hosts. You guys did wonderful. Great job. All right. Enjoy the rest of your days, everyone. We'll see you next time.
They're so good. I love the deal. You even do the big pancakes. Oh, good shading. It's really, really nice.